They called it justice. But it was bloodsport. She was sentenced to die in the arena, alone, wounded, unarmed, until a sound cut through the roar of the crowd. A human-made arrow hissed through the air and silenced the champion with a single heartbeat. Planet Velkar, outer arena circle. The sky above the execution pit boiled orange, thick with volcanic ash and ceremonial smoke. Tens of thousands of spectators screamed for blood from towering obsidian seats, aliens of all sizes and shapes, united by one addiction: judgment through combat. At the center of the arena, kneeling and bruised, was Commander Elira Valthar, once honored general of the Zalari Guard, now a traitor, a sacrifice to entertain the crowd. Blood trickled down her temple. One of her ribs had cracked during the last blow, the ceremonial hammer swing meant to break her spirit before the kill. Her blade had been taken, her armor stripped. They'd left her a tattered sash and a broken shoulder, all according to tradition. And tradition, it seemed, demanded she die slowly. She raised her head toward the executioner, the arena's reigning champion. A broad, reptilian beast of a male, muscles coiled under spiked bronze armor. He held a twin-bladed axe taller than Elira herself, grinning through rows of jagged teeth. The crowd chanted his name. Crexon! 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 Elira stood slowly, every movement a scream in her bones. She would not beg. She would not run. She closed her eyes. She had made peace with death. Flashback 2 nights before. Inside a high-security cell beneath the arena, Elira sat shackled. Across from her stood Ambassador Thorn, the only human on Velkar, flanked by 2 guards. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. Thorn tilted his head. "You saved me once. Let me return the favor." Elira gave a faint smile. "Favor? You'll get yourself killed." "That's a risk," he said calmly, "that humans are oddly comfortable with." She studied him. Soft-skinned. No claws. No natural armor. And yet, no fear. "There's no escape," she warned. "Then I won't help you escape," he said. "I'll help you end it." She narrowed her eyes. "How?" Thorn stepped closer. "By reminding them what real warriors look like." Back in the arena, Crexon stepped forward, raising his axe to the roar of the mob. The execution was moments away. Elira clenched her fists. Her legs shook beneath her. The dirt beneath her feet was stained red, not hers, not yet, but it would be. Then, suddenly, silence. A strange, unnatural hush rippled across the Colosseum like wind across dry grass. A hiss. A whine of speed. A shimmer of silver cutting the air. Thwack. A single arrow. Straight through Crexon's left eye. The champion dropped. No scream. No time. Just death. Instant. Final. Cold. The crowd gasped, a ripple of disbelief. And Elira turned in stunned silence toward the top of the arena's eastern ridge. There stood a human, dressed in a black cloak, wind tousling his hair. Ambassador Thorn, holding a long bow made of alien steel. The moment froze. Then chaos. Guards scrambled. Some screamed treason. Others ran. But the crowd, rooted in place, watched as the smallest being in the Colosseum lowered his bow and stepped forward, calm as starlight. Minutes later, arena center. Thorn met Elira's eyes as he approached, tossing aside his bow. "Told you I'd help you end it." Elira could barely breathe. You killed him." Thorn raised a brow. "You're welcome." She laughed once, more air than sound, then fell to her knees. "They'll never forgive this," she said. "No," Thorn agreed. "But they'll never forget it either." Above them, sirens howled. The High Council chamber lights blinked crimson. Security bots closed in. But the crowd? They began to stand. Some clapped. Some roared. One shouted, "Let her speak." And the arena's old silence was broken by a new one, the silence of power shifting. Back in the chambers, High Council emergency meeting. A hologram replayed the moment Crexon fell. A human, the war minister growled, broke every law of neutrality. He broke tradition, the speaker corrected. But he awoke something worse, curiosity. "We can't kill him now," someone else whispered. The crowd saw truth. The speaker narrowed his glowing eyes. "Then we must control the truth, or bury it beneath more blood." In the underground tunnels, Elira and Thorn ran. Elira limped beside the human who just defied an empire. "You were supposed to be soft," she said. "Diplomatic. Fragile. We are all those things," Thorn replied. "Until you give us a reason not to be." They vanished into the smoke. And in the stands above, the people were no longer shouting for blood. They were whispering of rebellion. "Awesome. Let's continue this cinematic journey." The tunnel lights flickered red. Elira leaned heavily against a stone wall, breathing hard. Her cracked ribs stabbed with every step. Beside her, Thorn moved like he wasn't being hunted, too calm, too focused. In one hand, he held a compact pulse pistol. In the other, a small communicator with scrambled signals buzzing through it. "We've got 8 minutes before they lock down the whole district," Thorn said. Elira groaned, pushing off the wall. "What are you even doing here, Thorn?" He glanced sideways. "Saving a friend. You're a diplomat. You're not supposed to pick sides." Thorn gave her a tight smile. "Humans have a saying, screw the rules when the rules get people killed." Elira managed a weak laugh. "Classic. High orbit, Velkar Defense Command." Fleet Commander Relvan watched the arena footage on loop. He used a Terran-designed arrow, an aide said. "Primitive, but efficient." It pierced Krexen's ocular armor plate. The commander growled. "Unassisted. That wasn't just aim. That was intention." The room was silent. "Put Earth on the watch list," Relvan snapped. "Any species with precision like that, and the arrogance to use it here, is dangerous." Velkar, Inner District, Safe House Omega. Hours later, Elira sat slumped on a bed of discarded fabrics, ribs bound, wounds cleaned. She watched as Thorn adjusted a satellite uplink on the floor, hands steady. "Why me?" she asked finally. "Why risk your life for a disgraced general?" Thorn didn't look up. "You risked yours for me on Datha Prime. You pulled me out of a blast crater when your own people ordered retreat. That was different." "No," he said. "It wasn't." Elira studied him. His face was calm, but his hands? Shaking now. "You killed someone today." Thorn nodded slowly. "Yeah, I did. You're not trained for that." He finally met her gaze. "No, but I trained with people who were. And they taught me that the moment you watch someone good die and do nothing, you become part of the problem." Silence. "Then, I didn't come to Velkar to start a war," he said. "But maybe someone had to." Meanwhile, Crowd Control Broadcast Center. The High Council scrambled to control the narrative. "Declare her dead," said Minister Zokel. "Say the execution was completed. Frame the footage." "And the human?" the speaker asked. "Arrested and executed. Off-screen. Quietly. The people won't believe it. Then we bury it in distraction. Give them blood. Another trial. Another traitor." But they were too late. Because someone had leaked the raw footage. And it had already reached the outer colonies. Outer Colony, Mining Moon Alexa 4. A grizzled miner watched the arena replay on a flickering holopad. Others crowded behind him. Dirty uniforms. Tired faces. When the arrow struck Krexen, silence. Then murmurs. Then someone whispered, "Did you see that? The human. She lived." And then, from the back, "Maybe it's time we stopped bowing too." The first spark. Small, but real. Safe House Omega, nightfall. Elira stood beside Thorn on the rooftop, staring over the jagged skyline of Velkar. "You realize they'll come after you now," she said. "Good," Thorn replied. "Maybe it'll give the others a chance." "Others?" He turned to her. "The council thinks fear keeps control. But fear cracks. Courage spreads." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're not like the other humans I've met. We're all like this," he said. "You just have to push us first." "So what's the plan?" Thorn tapped his calm. "We give them more to fear." Suddenly, 6 hollow signals blinked to life. Faces, alien and human alike. Old allies. Underground cells. Forgotten veterans. Journalists. Scientists. "Broadcast it," Thorn said. "The full truth." The arena. The arrow. The execution interrupted. "You'll start a civil war," one voice warned. "No," Thorn said. "I'll light a match." Elsewhere, rebel territory border. An old warship, the Courage of Sarah, powered up for the first time in years. Dust blew off its engines as forgotten crew gathered aboard. A flag was raised. Not of a species, not of a nation, but of an idea. Unity. Truth. Defiance. Back at the safe house, Elira looked down at the bow Thorn had used, now wrapped in cloth and hidden in the corner. "You made a statement." "No," Thorn said. "We made it together." And she knew he was right. Because even though the crowd had once screamed for her death, now they whispered her name. Not as traitor, but as survivor. "Great. Let's continue into the heart of the rebellion." Location, Outer Wall District, Velkar Underground. Elira's arm trembled as she lifted her old command blade. Its edges were chipped. The hilt burned against her cracked palms. You sure you can still swing that? Thorn asked, voice half serious. I'm not the one who missed leg day, she said with a smirk. They were hiding in an old data vault turned hideout, once used for military records, now home to dust, secrets, and ghosts. It smelled like old metal and rebellion. Thorn tapped at a portable transmitter on the table, rerouting comm traffic. We have maybe 24 hours before they triangulate us. But it's enough time. Enough time for what? She asked. To remind them what truth sounds like when it roars. Meanwhile, broadcast command tower. The High Council watched the rebellion surge like wildfire. Entire subchannels were saturated with unedited arena footage. Even worse, commentary was now spreading. Look how calm he was. The human didn't hesitate. She was ready to die, but he refused to let it happen. The speaker growled. They're turning her into a symbol. Then symbols must be erased, snapped the War Minister. Send assassins. Wipe their faces from the systems. Deny everything. But deep down they knew. It was too late. The people had seen what defiance looked like, and they wanted more. Inside safe house, interior scene. Thorn sat quietly in the corner, wrapping gauze around his forearm. Elira leaned against the wall, finally speaking softly. They executed my brother in that arena. 2 years ago. Thorn looked up. She didn't blink. They called him a traitor too. He leaked war crimes. I warned him not to. Begged him. But he believed in honor. Her voice cracked. He died screaming. And I sat in the command box and watched. Thorn put the gauze down. You think you're broken. But you're not. You're just unfinished. What does that mean? Scars aren't flaws, Thorn said. They're where the story enters you. Flash montage sequence. Rebellion banners raised in mining colonies. Encrypted messages from outer moons. Young cadets removing their imperial insignias. The arena crowd watching the uncut footage on hidden devices. A Zalari child whispering, she lived. The humans saved her. Elsewhere, government-controlled checkpoint. 2 guards watched as a convoy approached. ID scan required. One barked. But instead of a diplomat or merchant, out stepped Thorn, and Elira, in full armor, with a rebel flag sewn into her shoulder. The guards froze. Too late. Flashbang. Pulse rounds. Smoke and shadow. The checkpoint fell. Another symbol cracked. Later, Rebel comms broadcast, pirate frequency 7G. Elira stood in front of a static-filled screen, battered but alive. She looked directly into the lens. You watched me kneel in the arena. You watched me bleed. You watched me sentenced to death for telling the truth. Now watch me rise. This is not war. This is reckoning. And we are not afraid anymore. She stepped back, and Thorn walked into frame. To those who still serve the High Council, we don't want to kill you. But we will if you keep standing between us and the truth. Council chambers, moments later. The speaker crushed the calm crystal in his fist. She's more dangerous now than she ever was with an army. She has one now, someone whispered. They just don't wear uniforms anymore. Velkar Market, midnight raid. Civilians ran. Drones swept through buildings. But this time, rebels fought back. And in the alleyways, the symbol of the fallen arrow was painted on walls, the mark of the uprising. Safe house, night before the push. Elira sat polishing her blade. Thorn walked in, carrying 2 ration packs. You never told me why you brought a bow, she said suddenly. He shrugged. My great-grandfather was a hunter on Earth. Taught my dad. Dad taught me. You could have used a gun. Yeah, Thorn said. But something about killing their champion with something so human, so primitive. I knew it'd hit harder. Elira smiled. It did. She reached into her pocket and held up a chipped arrowhead. This saved my life. You saved mine first, he said quietly. A long silence. Then, softly, thank you for choosing me. You never needed choosing, Thorn replied. You just needed someone to remind them who you are. And outside, in the cities and on the moons, they were already remembering. Absolutely. Here's the next thrilling chapter of your story. Location, Velkar Resistance Staging Grounds, Old Reactor Dome. The place had once powered the city's northern district. Now it hummed with a different energy, the kind only revolution could generate. Elira stood before a crude command table, surrounded by holograms, live data feeds, and a dozen rebel leaders, some alien, some human, all watching her. She pointed to a blinking red cluster on the map. The Velkar Tower is where the speaker will make his next broadcast. If we take the feed, even for 10 seconds, we control the narrative. A cyborg from the mining moons narrowed her eyes. You're talking about storming a fully armed fortress. No, Elira replied. I'm talking about breaking it. Murmurs spread, but then came a calm voice from behind her. She's not wrong, Thorn said, stepping forward. You can kill a message, but you can't kill a symbol. He dropped a bag on the table. Inside, armor pieces bearing the High Council's insignia, painted over in red and black. I stole these from one of their guard outposts, he added. We walk in wearing the enemy's skin. Meanwhile, High Tower Council room. The speaker was pacing. Holoscreens floated around him. They're gaining ground, one advisor reported. 13 sectors now openly refuse council patrols. 7 military outposts have defected. What about the human? The speaker snarled. He leads from the shadows. Uses ancient tactics. Ambushes. Propaganda. We can't predict him. The speaker growled low. Then make an example of someone else. Bleed this rebellion until it forgets why it started. Flash scene, small moon base. A rebel scout is cornered. Surrounded. Council troopers close in. He raises a shaky blaster. Then suddenly, a whistling sound. An arrow pierces the lead trooper's armor. Gasps. From the shadows, a cloaked human steps out, bow raised. Tell the speaker. The human says, we're not afraid of his tower. Back at the reactor dome, night before the assault. The air was heavy with tension. Elira sat sharpening her blade. Thorn adjusted his customized bow, now fitted with pull string stabilizers. Beside him, a datapad glowed with last-minute route schematics. Tomorrow, we either wake the galaxy, Elira said, or we die forgotten. Thorn looked over. There's no forgetting what's already started. She glanced at him. You ever scared? All the time. And you still walk forward? He smiled. That's what makes it bravery. The next day, storming the Velkar Tower, Elira and her strike team, disguised in stolen armor, marched through Sector 3. Crowds watched. Some whispered. Others saluted. Inside the tower perimeter, council guards barely noticed the rebel unit, until it was too late. One silent takedown. 2 more incapacitated. Then, explosion. The power grid flickered, and the alarms began to scream. Elira ripped off her helmet. Now, Thorn fired a single arrow, shattering the Mastercom node's casing. The override system kicked in. A red light blinked on the control panel. Live broadcast engaged. The message heard across the stars. Elira stood before the camera. Not in armor, not in war paint, but scarred, bloodied, and standing tall. To every system still in the dark, we are not the traitors. We are the truth they tried to bury, the voice they tried to silence. And we are done kneeling. Behind her, Thorn raised a new banner, the symbol of a broken arrow inside a rising sun. This is not just rebellion, Elira said. This is justice. The feed cut, on their terms. But the message was out. Moments later, battle at the tower. Council reinforcements swarmed. Rebel fighters fired back, holding the central chamber. Thorn fought side by side with Elira, bow in hand, switching to sidearm when needed. At one point, a guard lunged for her exposed back. Thorn threw himself between them, took the hit, collapsed. Elira screamed. Sliced down the attacker in a single move. Blood everywhere. Thorn. He coughed, smiling even through the pain. I told you. Unfinished stories hurt the most. They escaped. Barely. The tower was damaged, but not destroyed. But the symbol? It was now alive in every system on the fringe. Rebels painted it in blood, in ash, on warships and helmets, and the words that followed it. She was supposed to die. But he stood beside her. Absolutely. Let's bring it home with an epic, emotional finale. Location, outer orbit, refugee medical frigate Valorborn. The lights above Elira buzzed softly, and the smell of sterilized steel filled her lungs. She sat at Thorn's bedside, his chest bandaged, a faint rise and fall beneath the sheets. He had taken the blade meant for her, and now he lay unconscious, lips dry, brow furrowed in pain. She had seen 100 warriors fall. But this was different. Because he wasn't a warrior. He was something rare. A human who chose her. Not her title. Not her strength. Her. She held his hand and whispered, You stubborn idiot. You gave them a symbol. And you gave me a reason to keep going. Meanwhile, across the systems, the footage had spread. First the rebellion broadcast. Then smuggled arena footage. Then first-hand accounts. Whole planetary sectors that once bowed to the Council now raised banners of resistance. But they didn't raise them under her name alone. They raised them under two names, Valthur and Thorn, the alien who wouldn't kneel, and the human who stood beside her. High Council chamber collapse. The speaker's voice echoed in near-empty halls. Most chairs sat vacant now. The air was stale. The power dimmed. We've lost 37 sectors, his only remaining advisor said. The outer colonies have seceded. Even the military is hesitant. Then we ended ourselves. The speaker slammed his fist on the table. Call the executor fleet. Wipe the Valorborn from orbit. Crush the rebels in one final blow. But outside the chamber, unknown to them, their own guards were listening, recording, and that final command would never leave the planet. On board the Valorborn, one day later, Thorn opened his eyes, groaned. What happened? Elira leaned in, a rare smile breaking across her face. You got stabbed. Figures, he rasped. Did we win? Not yet, she said softly. But we will. You always that confident? No, she replied. You made me that way. Montage begins. Rebel ships launching from asteroid belts. Alien warriors fighting beside humans. Council towers toppled. Families cheering in underground shelters as pirate signals beamed the broadcast. Children tracing the broken arrow and sun symbol on dusty walls. And at the center of it, Thorn and Elira, standing side by side, no longer hunted, now leaders of something bigger. 1 week later, official surrender of the Council. A neutral moon. The last 5 surviving Council leaders step onto a war-blasted platform. They kneel, not to a military general, not to a high chancellor, but to her, Elira Valthur, and to the human who fired the arrow that started it all. Thorn, what do you want? One asks. Nothing, Elira replies. That's what makes us different. She steps back. Thorn steps forward. But we will take your silence. And you will watch as we build a better galaxy without you. Later, Monument Circle, Velkar Prime. The arena where she was meant to die? Now a memorial. The central statue? A towering sculpture of 2 figures. One alien, sword drawn, face uplifted in defiance. One human, drawing a bow, eyes locked forward. Beneath it, an inscription. She stood alone, until one arrow made the galaxy listen. Now, we stand together. Final scene, observation deck, quiet night. Thorn and Elira look out over a reborn city. Peace, for once, hold steady. You ever miss it? She asks. The quiet, he shrugs. No. The chaos. Sometimes, he smirks. But I prefer this view. A pause. Then, we did something impossible, she says. No, he says. We did something human. They say nothing more. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest victory.